out of a particular fluid. Once it's primed, it should maintain prime, but if I run out of water or run out of detergent or run out of SH, I introduce air into the system. And in order to get that air out and reprime the system, you need to force feed the booster pump to get the air out. The booster pump is designed where it can draw water in, but it does not have suction, so it doesn't self-prime, so it has to be primed. Once it's water's moving, it creates basically vacuum and lift that it will continue to draw more water in, but it's not designed to self-prime like a piston pump would with check valves or a diaphragm pump, because they do have check valves that are designed to pull and self-prime. So I'm going to set this valve here onto the feeding the booster pump for priming. I'm going to come back over to the booster pump here, and if I have to prime each one of my valves, we're going to start with our water valve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my hose out right here. Real easy to work with. My booster pump will be plugged in either to the generator or to power on the house. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to open my water valve all the way. I'm going to turn my valve on top of the booster pump to direct feed from the water. And if it was hooked up, I would be able to spray water. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to start spraying water. And then I'm going to turn it back to the proportioner. And if this had air gap in it, what you'd see is the air moving through and water coming in. And I would do that. And then and again, while I'm pulling the trigger, I'll turn it back to direct feed and then back to the proportioner again. And that will bring more through. Once I see that all the air's out of the line, I can go on to the next valve. So I'll shut the water off, do the same thing with the detergent. Do it to direct feed while it's running, keeping the trigger pulled. It'll suck the water in. And then I can do that, turn it back to proportioner to suck it in, go back to the high pressure direct feed to get the air back out and reprime the pump. And then I might do that 2 or 3 or 4 times depending on how much air is in the system they have to get out. Okay, once that's primed, I'll do it one more time with the SH valve. I will direct feed to get the air out of the system, then I'll turn the valve to the proportioner and watch for any air coming through the line. Once I see that it's full, the line's full, and coming up here and I don't have air, then I know that that's primed. I have to do it one more time where I turn it up to the bleach and do the same process. Direct feed from the garden hose to get the air out, and then go back to the proportioner. Direct feed from the garden hose, and then go back to the proportioner. And each one of those steps might take 3 to 5 seconds of time on each position. I would probably count to 10, and you're going to be safe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then switch your valve. Then you know for sure that you've got the air out and the pump is fully primed. At that point, once everything's fully primed, I can go to my 5-step process and set my mixes. So again, I want to be spraying bleach. I want a 3% mix. I want 4 on my detergent. My water is open all the way, and I'm drawing for my proportioner. Now I can go and I can spray my house. At the end of the day, I got to rinse it out. Well, we can go through the changing process. So I sprayed the roof. Let's say I want to have a little bit weaker mix. I can come back to the truck here. I'm going to turn the SH down to, let's say, a 2% mix because I want a weaker mix. I'm going to put a marker in the line, so I'm going to turn my detergent all the way up. I'm going to squeeze the trigger. I'm going to count to 3. 1001, 1002, 1003. I'm going to let off the trigger. I'm going to turn my detergent back to my 4 setting, and I'm going to finish spraying what's in the line. I'm going to see at one particular point what we call a marker, well, a big glob of soap. That big glob of soap will give me a visual indicator that everything after that point is the new mix. Then I can continue to spray and do what I need to do with cleaning the surface. At the end of the day, I want to make sure I flush out my proportioner, my booster pump. So in order to do that, 5 steps. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to turn my bleach water selector for my flush valve to flush for the water. I'm going to turn my SH valve up all the way. I'm going to turn my detergent off. I'm going to leave my water on, and I'm going to stay on proportioner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this point, I can continue to spray out what's in the line, spray a little more bleach on the surface, and continue to spray and rinse things down with the water. And I probably want to run it for about 3 to 5 minutes, just flushing it with water, which will keep your proportioner in really good shape, keep your booster pump in really good shape, and make it last a really long time. If for some reason I ever need to rinse and have a little bit additional power, The booster pump will take your inlet water pressure and boost it by about 100 to 120 psi. So if I'm coming in with 100 psi water, I can actually boost that to 225 psi for really heavy, really strong, powered rinsing. All I have to do is come back over here. I don't have to even worry about anything that's going on with the proportioner. All I have to do is turn this over to the direct feed from the garden hose, make sure that my valve over here is on direct feed from garden hose, and I can pressure rinse. After you had primed it, you would probably come back to this unit and turn this to keep your tank full while you're washing. But at the end of the day, if I do want to do some pressured rinsing, all I have to do is make sure that this is turned on to feeding the booster pump and that this is turned on to direct feed from the hose reel. So that is the basics of the soft wash system and the proportioner from Power Wash Store. We can talk a little bit about the booster pump, the remote control wizard here. This particular unit is set up that we have the main power button to turn it on. We have the A button, which currently is not hooked up to anything. That's just a little plug to keep moisture from getting up in there. But there is a 12-volt relay in there currently installed. If you wanted to add lights or something, he could use it to actually turn his burner on and off or something along those lines. That can be controlled either by the button there, or if you look at the light here, when I push the A button, you can see that it lights up. So it's making the relay click. It might be hard to hear the relay click, but it's clicking. Same thing here. If I push the B button, you'll see that turns the booster pump on and off. And since it's not plugged in, it's not turning on and off. But I have the ability to turn it on and off here and on and off here. If I turn this button on, the booster pump will remain on until I either turn this button off or turn the power off. Once I turn the power off, it'll shut down, but you'll see because it is still depressed, because it is a latching switch, when I turn it back on, after the power gets to it, it turns the pump back on. So you have to make sure you turn that off. This is really nice because if you're working on the back side of the house, this will prevent the pump from continually running when you're there. If somebody wants to walk up and talk to you, you have the ability to just hit this button and turn it off. And then you squeeze the trigger, make sure it's not still on. If you see the pressure drop, you know it's off. Then you won't burn up this pump with it running in bypass for 5 or 10 minutes while you're either climbing down from a roof or a homeowner or somebody wants to talk to you. So this